Hello everyone, Pillars TCG here, back again with another episode of my series on how to create your own homemade trading card games. So last time I began with the overview of a game. So essentially I said to grab a key idea, something you love or hate about a trading card game, and branch that out, play with it more, and create a deck using other cards to play out your idea using that game's rules. So that brings us to where we are today. I hope you guys have explored your premises a bit more. I will do a quick overview of what I did, just to maybe give some ideas. I put down last time, when a creature is destroyed, the opposing player gains X points, points being equal to the level. I will also add, when a player's attacked directly, their opponent gains points equal to the level of the attacking creature. So essentially I'm thinking, well, if a level 6 attacks someone directly, then when you attack them directly you get 6 points. If it was a 4 points, etc. So I've kind of fleshed out the point system a bit more, and my second overview on how to get your phases, or the second half of the game to start, I was thinking to just have it where players will have 25 card decks, not traditional 40 or 60, whatever, and as soon as the 25 cards are out and someone can't draw any more, the half ends. So that's where I'm kind of going with this. So it'll probably be, if I make it, say I have 7 cards, it would be like a 15 turn game. But that way there's some flexibility on length depending on what cards are played. It makes draw power a bit weaker in the game, or stronger depending on how you look at it. So I thought that would add a nice little edge. Let's talk about uniqueness. The big point about uniqueness I'd like to make is these rules right here, they might seem unique at first, except you could argue, why can't you just play Yu-Gi-Oh but play it exactly like this? There's no reason why you couldn't. And that's where uniqueness comes in. This is where your game shines and has some big defining feature. Some of your overviews will be more unique than others. Some, for example, if you don't have creatures in your game, an overview like that is a lot more unique than others. From there, you'll already have a main unique premise, and you can start going from that. But this is going to focus on premises like mine that are not very unique. So if it's not very unique, what am I going to do from there? So this is when you think about, what is something about your premise you can use to make it unique? So what I'm going to do for mine, and I'll put this here in the specifications tab, is I will write down cards have different abilities depending on the phase. So what I'm thinking of doing is essentially, you can play a card that's built to be incredibly strong for phase 1, but it might be very weak for phase 2. So that's how I plan on balancing some of these cards. I'm debating whether or not I will have an extra deck in my game, so I'll also put that in my specifications. So my specifications tab is where I like to keep a lot of my ideas for my game just going. This is where I like to just have a basic format of what I want to happen. So this is what I'm going to be branching on for my uniqueness. This would be like having a card like the Blue Eyes White Dragon, an incredibly powerful Yu-Gi-Oh card. You play that in the first phase, but in the second phase it's like a Karibo, a very weak card. So those cards could be far weaker, and it's just going to clutter your deck in the second phase. Not only that, this allows your strategy to change, and extra decks could help more with this, which is why I'm debating adding them. So the point is, I want a very evolving game. I want you to be able to sit down, realize why you're losing going into the second phase, and be able to switch it back, use a different strategy to beat your opponent. So that's where I'm going to be branching off for my uniqueness phase. I'm going to be trying to figure out, what about this idea can I make to make it as unique as possible? There will be many things about your game that will be unique, but you need one overlying thing that when someone describes your game, they go, oh, it's like Yu-Gi-Oh, but with blank. That's how I love to look at this. You want an easy way to describe your game that gets people intrigued. You need it so someone can describe your game and get someone wanting to play in just one sentence or two. And that is the overall goal of uniqueness. So that's why in my game, I'm describing it where it's a trading card game set up to where your cards change depending on which phase of the game you're in. So I'm going to be highlighting this as my main part as I develop the game. this, your overview. Now, before you get confused, your overview is the main point for making the rules of your game, and your uniqueness is kind of the overview of the gameplay of your game. How is it going to play out? So your overview tells you the underlying rules, and your uniqueness gives you the specifications on what exactly you want to do. So let's talk about some ideas on how to get your game unique. This is a big step in the process. It's pretty easy to think of ideas as a long-standing creator, but for newer people, it's not that easy. You can't just sit there think, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. I can give you some tips for this. To start out, going back to how you figured out your overview by using cards from different games, try adding a different rule to it, as I was saying last time. As I was talking about, using these decks from other card games is by far the best way to get a game going. So what I would recommend is figuring out what can you add to your premise. So let's say your premise is... So let's use an easy example that has been done many times before. The premise of your game is it's kind of like Magic the Gathering, but you have lanes, or like a field. So if no one's blocking you in one way, you can attack them directly. So how do you change that from just Magic but with a field? You can add a different underlying premise and be like, well, you have different position cards. So certain creatures are your front line, some are your back line, some are your aerial support, things like that, or a commander. But to make it even more interesting, you can maybe change it so each card has stats for those different positions. So if you need to play a card in the front line when it's supposed to be in the back just because you need to protect yourself, that card may be incredibly weak when you play it in that front line, but incredibly strong if you find a way to play it in your back line. That could be the uniqueness you're going for your game. So that's an example of figuring out how your premise can be turned into something unique, something you can branch the rest of your game rules and the rest of the uniqueness of your game off of. Now, before I end off, I'd like to talk about this goals section right here. You should do this after you get your premise and your uniqueness. This will definitely help you in just formatting an overall idea of your game. So for your goals, you should just put a simplified way of your premise. Essentially put how you're supposed to win the game. So I'll put have more points than your opponent at the end of both phases. I'll put the second goal, or big thing about my game, which is cards have different abilities depending on which phase they are played in. Use this to your advantage in deck building for any scenario. This is kind of like things that if someone was putting it on like the back of a box, how they would want to describe their game, is how I would say you should look at this. So these two things, it may seem small and kind of dumb to put them down now, but it's always good to have to look back on to be like, okay, what is the simplified form of my game? How would I describe this to a friend? Somebody asked me, hey, how do you play your game? And I told them, there are two phases. At the end of both phases, whoever has the most points wins the game. But there's a catch. Your cards have different abilities depending on which phase you play them in. So you need to use this to your advantage when you're deck building to be able to beat your opponent no matter the scenario that is going on in the match. See, that's a very quick way of explaining your game. That's what I use this goals section for. Your overview is for expanding the basis of your game, essentially the building blocks. Your specifications is the unique part of your game and what sets it apart from any other TCG on the market. I hope you guys enjoyed and that this helped you. Please leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. The support on this series has been amazing so far, and it's really helping me keep this series running. Hope you all enjoyed and have a great day.